Well, contrary to what I was thinking when I started watching this season, it turned out to be a pretty nice product, minus the end, but that's more because of the unknown aspect. I'll get to that later. But like when I first started the season, I honestly was expecting that female British agent that shot Sam. I was thinking that that was just going to be a weak storyline that was going to be written off after like 2 episodes, and technically it was, but then it was actually expanded to involve the whole British Men of Letters organization, which added a real nice additional layer to the story. And I found that it was actually very appropriate that they did that, given the sort of pushing away that they did with Kaz and Crowley and giving them storylines that are separate from Sam and Dean. I thought that was a very well executed thing, and best of all, it didn't even feel like that there were too many storylines going on because they did a great job shifting from one main character situation to the other, especially since Kaz's storyline really didn't require you to be watching him that much. So, wasn't even really three main storylines, it was more like two and a half, given how much Kaz's storyline was tied in looser ways to the other two. I'd say that it was done pretty well. So yeah, Robert Singer and Andrew Deb, I think his name is. You guys did good taking over as showrunner, even though Jeremy Carver is still involved with the show for this season. Um, but yeah, I didn't really feel like that there was a big change in style when this occurred, which I'm appreciative of, because I felt like starting with season 10, this show really was starting to find its groove again, except for issues with climaxes. Yeah, but all that was good. I'm not going to really comment on Kaz's storyline that much because there really isn't that much to tell, you know. But I do feel like he was able to do a better job of protecting Kelly than the guys could have done. And there's no way that the British Men of Letters would have done a good job protecting her because, you know, they would have just offed her. So, yeah. But it was nice to show that he demonstrated himself to be capable of caring for somebody more here. Like, I don't think that this was a romantic thing. He never once tried to put any moves on her, but caring about her future and then caring about the child. Yold, he's had a lot of human experiences, both from the angel and human perspective, so it's different. Now, what? Really shows how much he's got, even though he still doesn't totally understand, but that gap has really significantly gone down. Nah. No. Then Crowley's storyline. I felt that that was a great continuation of what was going on from last season with the back and forth battle between him and Lucifer. It was kind of annoying when Lucifer originally was going from different vessels, and I'm just like, I am not a fan of this. But then fortunately, they had him go back into Mark again. I don't think that's the name of the human, that's the name of the actor, but once they did that, all was forgiven because I'm like, yeah, now we're back to normal, status quo. But I also like how this season tried to re-emphasize the fact that even though Lucifer is like the evil of all evils, you have to remember that he actually is not a demon. He is a fallen angel because when Lucifer originally breaks free and is trying to get Crowley into submission, and how it's the angel manifestation, the wing things that you see behind him, it's a powerful reminder. People keep forgetting Lucifer's real origin. Now that's something that we got to remind ourselves about every once in a while. he wasn't originally a bad guy. He was a good guy. Yeah. And it was nice to have to see Crowley have to think a lot more creatively, because even though there were moments that in last season made you think that more people were being obedient to Lucifer, this season shows that there's genuine people that are on each side, and they're not just bowing down to whoever's in charge, not caring about that kind of thing. Although those two guys that freed Lucifer, both of them were just stupid, because one of them was only doing it to get power, thinking that he could bully Lucifer as if, and the other guy... yeah, that's an obvious play on real-life situations that were going on at the time. Stupid, but I'm glad that they did that in an indirect way, because if they'd done it in a direct way, that would be really out of line for this show. So, good job on that. And then how they ended up dealing with Lucifer right at the end, minus the very, very, very last part of doing that. Well, they kind of had to do that because owing to the fact that they killed off Crowley's mother, which wasn't that surprising, because I had felt at the end of last season that they had taken the character about as far as they could go, and they had in terms of using her as a recurring character, but instead they just have her show up in a couple of appearances, dealing with what's going on in that particular episode, and then having her be killed off screen by Lucifer. I don't feel like that was a cheap way of dealing with the character. I felt that was very appropriate. Plus, given how many supporting characters have been cropping up into the show, it stands to reason that they might have wanted to get rid of some of them, like that Death Hunter. It's sad, but it proved a point. Plus, it's not crazy as to what they did with that character. It's another hunter. They openly admit that any hunt could be their last. They know this. So doing what they did with her in that bit wasn't that surprising, and I don't think was a disservice to the character, especially since they then try to have Jody and Alex be attacked, but luckily they're able to stop that, and they also have Claire come back in another episode where she demonstrates that actually she's completely moved on from all the wrongs that the brothers and Kaz did to her years ago, so that's nice. All that was good, and all that stuff, but anyways, getting back to Lucifer, sorry about that. Owing to the fact that Rowena is out of the picture, all of the Archangels are dead, incapacitated to some degree, and Chuck, as Lucifer states, is gone. Not gone, but is in a mode where he doesn't seem to care that much about what's going on. Makes sense that you can't put Lucifer back in the cage. That's too hard. But get Lucifer into a different dimension? Well, that's something that the show hasn't really talked about, even though we have seen alternate timelines before Season 5, and then I think there was one other time, but I can't remember. An alternate timeline that wasn't a hallucination, because they did that in Season 5 also, but, I lost my train of thought there. Right, but interdimension kind of thing, that's not something that has been done on this show before, so I'm curious to see if they end up utilizing this into next season, given what happened at the end of the season. I don't totally get the genesis of how that came to be, because that had to be something that Kid Lucifer, for lack of a better term, ended up creating, but maybe I'm just overthinking it. Maybe there is no logical explanation as to why this other dimension portal was created and all that stuff. I'll find out, won't I? Right. So, because all the obvious ways to beat Lucifer were gone, you had to come up with something much more original. So, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I think I've delved into everything except for the brothers' main storyline and then the ending. So, that British Men of Letters thing. Well, it was nice to have a more human threat this time around because we haven't really had anything like this since either, depending on your point of view, the Leviathans, who acted a lot more human than you would have expected, or that FBI agent that was bothering them for like seasons 2 through 4, if I recall correct. Leo, that's not to say that they don't occasionally have problems with people, but that's like 1 or 2 episodes. Whereas this was an ongoing storyline that started as something kind of dumb, but then was expanded and then dealt with. So all this little bit of world building with that organization on the British side, I'd say that they did good there. Though I would have liked some more personalization from the people up top. Now, don't get me wrong; they did a decent job of personalizing. Damn it, it's not Mark. I'm just saying, okay, Mick. You know who I'm talking about. They did a decent job personalizing him and Mr. Ketch. Now, they didn't really give him that much personalization, but that's the point of the character. He's supposed to be emotionally distant from like everybody. Yeah. So I don't have a problem with that. But that older female chick who seemed to be even in charge of Mr. Ketch, and then that voice coming from the computer. I kind of wish that there was a little bit more of that they had done, but at the same time, maybe again that was some of their point because not giving that female personalization ends up making the organization seem colder. Maybe that's what they're going for, yeah. And then that voice from the computer, well, it stands to reason that you're not going to have the highest person going out there. No, you don't do that, okay? You send out the highest person that's easy to just go out and do all that stuff. That's what they did with Mr. Ketch at the beginning. He's a veteran that only goes out when it reaches a certain point. But you could tell that he had no problem doing all this. He's like, all right, you need my help, here we go again. He had no problem committing himself. But here's the thing that I don't like about how they ended up dealing with that storyline. Now, Mr. Ketch, again, I don't have any problem with him trying to do all these hoodwinks on the brothers and then them offing him unceremoniously. You would have to off him in a cold manner, okay? Because that fits in line with the character. He's completely devoted to a cause, not thinking about it at all, like with that Black Angel Ural in seasons 4 and 5, you know? It fits in line. But what they did with that female chick who they bring back right at the end of the season, during that last episode, I can't help but feel like I missed something where either it was revealed that it was Mr. Ketch tricking the brothers into thinking that it was her with them when it was him, or they were trying to put some more personalization to the character, then they just write her off. I don't know, I just can't help but feel like I missed something there. Now I know what you're thinking, well, why didn't I just look things up on the Supernatural Wiki about this? Because I'm not so sure that we're completely done with the Men of Letters bit for next season. So I'm worried I might learn something. So I gotta wait for another season before I can figure out if I really did miss anything or not. So, yeah, that's one of the issues that I have with the end of this season. And then the real problems that I have for this season is what they did with the main characters, like right at the end. Now, Lucifer, I don't have a problem with that. Then him dragging Mary in there, well, it was like, you really think that an ordinary person can beat down Lucifer that much into a portal, you know? That's just way too easy. So him dragging Mary in there, it makes sense that he was able to do that, but it also gives a hook for next season because he clearly didn't kill Mary in the very last shot. So that means we're going to see more of Mary. If we weren't going to see more of Mary, we would have seen him kill her. We didn't. So that's part of the hook for next season, and I'm curious to see how they end up doing that. But then, here's the real problem. Kaz and Crowley. Now, hold on a minute. When it comes to Kaz, maybe, just maybe, I'm talking out of my butt here, because this isn't too unsimilar to how he and Bobby were killed right at the end of Season 5 and they were brought back. Okay, we've seen Kaz die and then be brought back multiple times. So, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but if you truly did kill Kaz in that manner, that is a huge disservice to the character. So, yeah. So if Kaz comes back, I got no problems with what you did. If he doesn't come back, oh, I am not going to be happy, because this will be just as bad as when you dropped the ball at the end of Season 10. Then Crowley, well, part of me thinks that this is a disservice, but part of me doesn't, because he did give some warning signs that he might be doing something drastic. Because this season revealed that contrary to what we've been thinking, he didn't naturally ascend to be the person in charge of Hell after it seems like Lilith was deposed, even though I don't really recall her being the one in charge of Hell at that point. He was offered the position by this Prince of Hell, which I feel like kind of cheapens it, but at the same time, you know, I don't know. I don't know. But, you know, learning that it wasn't natural, him saying, you know, that he's getting tired of his job, and I think that there was one other tiny thing that he said in there. It just made sense that he might do something different by the end of this season. And he did say, I need a life to make this work, but he never said that it had to be an ordinary life. It could be a supernatural life, so, But I just can't help but feel like that there's just something more to what the character was doing, because it just... him offing himself to try and make a point to defeat an evil? He doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. And he also doesn't strike me as caring about the brothers enough to have been using that as an example, so... I don't know. Well, hopefully I get an explanation as to what the ramifications of that are in next season, because it just doesn't make any sense to me, in my mind. So, yep. Good season, except like with Season 10, there was an issue like right at the end, but there is the potential for them to fix it, because I'm about to start watching this season, so we'll see what happens. Okay, I killed it by a few minutes this time around, not bad. See ya.